Welcome to the Financial Coaches Podcast, where we talk about how to build your practice from startup to scale up while being the kind of coach your clients crave. Finally, a podcast for financial coaches. Here are your hosts, Maria Casillas and Cody Sizemore.
Hello, and welcome back to the Financial Coaches Podcast. We are very excited to talk about this topic today, but before we get into it, I just want to give you guys a friendly reminder that we have been doing this for just over a year now, and it's been an amazing ride. I have learned quite a bit myself, and I've really enjoyed connecting with a lot of people. So we just wanted to ask that if you enjoy this episode, that you leave a review. Ideally a 5-star review. We love seeing those, but be honest. We want to know what your actual thoughts are on this. So, we ask that because it allows, whatever platform that you're listening to this on to push it to other people who might need this information as well. And of course, that just helps people learn and grow and, expand their own business and help more people. So that small act that you can do by leaving a review or rating the show is actually a pretty big thing for this show and the listeners and the potential listeners as well. And also, I talked about connecting with people over the last year. A big part of that has been because of our Facebook group that we have, which is New Money Habits Financial Coaches. If you want to get plugged into there, it's free to join. It's a great community. It's a growing community of coaches. We got a couple hundred coaches in there right now. And it's a really good place to just connect, learn, and be a part of some events that we're having. We do some co-working Wednesdays. We're starting up a book club. There's several things to be plugged into that to help you stay consistent, stay accountable, and of course, grow your business. So with all that being said, I'm here, joined as always with my lovely co-host, Maria Casillas. Maria, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you. Excited to be here with you today.
Great. That's awesome. So one of the questions that we had come up on our last coaches meetup, which is something that is available to people in that Facebook group, which is why I brought it up. But we had one, I believe it was last week, if I'm not mistaken. And one of the topics that came up in that coaches meetup is, how long should I work with a client? And we had a really good conversation. So I figured, hey, to the people who weren't a part of that meetup, but are listeners to the show, that would be a really good conversation for us to have as well. Because I got a lot of value from that, and I know a lot of other people did too.
Yeah, I agree. And it is a very, very common question, and I don't think that it has a super simple answer to it. So I think this will be a good discussion to just kind of figure out, like, how do we determine that? Would you like me to start?
Yeah, of course. Let's hear it.
Okay. Well, one of the first things that I think is super important is to always meet somebody where they are. So I think that has to be one of the first questions that we ask. Where is this person? And it doesn't mean, like, where are they physically? What part of the world are they in? Although that could help figuring out, like, what time you're going to meet. But when it comes to how often or how long will you be meeting, it really might be determined by what are their needs? What stages of change are they in? Are they in a ready to just like take action type of stage, or are they still kind of just preparing to make some changes in their lives? If they are maybe they already made a change and they're really just hiring you because they want to do some maintenance with that change. All of those things are going to determine how long you're going to meet with somebody. And so I think that it's super important to figure out whether it's just through some questioning or some, assumptions. Be careful with the assumptions, but just to kind of draw out of them. And then you can decide based on the answers to those questions, where do you think they are and how long do you think it would be good to be working with them? And then I also think that we're going to want to set an expectation for them. So we'll get into that part in a little bit. But I would say, well, first I'm curious to know, how long do you typically meet with somebody, Cody? And have you ever even done what I just suggested in terms of like figuring out where they are?
Yeah. Great questions. So I do have a general layout of how long I would typically work with someone, but it's pretty open-ended, to be honest with you. So to answer your first question, and then I'll go into the second one. To answer the first question, the way that I structure my coaching is I do a base of 6 months. So basically like a 6-month commitment, generally speaking. And the reason I do that is because I just think that anything less than that, now again, depending on the person's situation, but for my ideal clients, anything less than that, it's just not a lot of time. And oftentimes it's just not worth it because they really won't get what they really need and or want out of something less than 6 months. So I do a commitment of a minimum of 6 months, but then after that I leave it open-ended, right? And I stole a phrase from Mike Keneally, which, for those of you who don't know, Mike is one of the coaches at New Money Habits, and he's also the producer of this very show. And he's been coaching for, I don't know, 5-6 years, something like that.
Yeah, officially. But he always says he's been coaching for 20, 30 years without realizing he was doing it.
Yeah, so he's been coaching for a decent amount of time. And something that he said to me, which I started implementing, and it's made a huge difference, is that he tells people that he wants to work with them for as long as they're getting help and value from the sessions, right? So I always, when I'm onboarding a client, I tell them like, hey, this is a minimum 6-month commitment, but I want to work with you for as long as you're getting help and value from our sessions. And that enables me to, when that 6-month period comes up, it's not like a, hey, we're done, do you want to renew, or whatever kind of thing. It's just, hey, like, we're just going to keep rolling until you tell me that you're good, kind of thing. So typically, like, my average time span that I work with someone is anywhere between 9 to 15 months. Some longer. I have clients that I've been working with for the last 2.5 years, ever since I first started. And I have some clients that stop right at 6 months. So generally speaking, that's how I structure things. But to answer your second question with meeting people where they're at, yes, I have worked with people for less than 6 months. If we hop in and we look at their situation and we see what they need and what makes sense for them, if it's something that they only need 2 or 3 months of support with, just to get it through like a shorter period of change in their life, something like that, or an obstacle that they're up against right now, then that's totally fine. We can roll with that, and we'll set up a structure for that that's unique to them. But I will always leave that phrase that Mike said. I do want to work with you as long as you have help and value from these sessions. So sometimes we'll set up those 2 or 3 month coaching relationships, but they may turn into 5 or 6 months or more. It just kind of depends. So does that answer your question?
Absolutely. And I'm really glad that you threw in that last part about how you will structure something for 2 to 3 months for those individuals. Because when you said, I do a minimum of 6 months, I kept my mouth shut, but I was like, I hope that he also, is able to give something else. And you did. You came through at the end there. So I'm really, really glad to hear that. I do very similarly to what you do. I think one small change is I do have a 3-month package that I'm willing to offer even to somebody who needs more than that. But I actually price that in a way that doesn't really make sense for them to use it. So I'm letting
more to do 3 months versus 6 months.
Yeah, right? not totally more, but definitely like more per session when you put it all out there. And it becomes more expensive, if you will, because what I'm trying to do is weed out the ones who are just looking for something cheap. That's important to me. But also I want to find out if somebody truly is just like needing that jump start and they're like, I just don't really know that I'm ready for 6 months or whatever. I will let them do the 3 month, but oftentimes if they're saying, you know what, I really do want the 6 months, I will apply that to the 6 month package for them so that they don't think I'm just trying to, grab extra cash from them. So I think that's one small difference. And then the other small difference, and it's maybe not even different. You might do this as well. You didn't say it explicitly. towards the end, I have where people can continue to work with me at the regular coaching rate, but I also have what I call like the maintenance program. So somebody who is they don't need as much of that transformational coaching anymore. They really just need some of that added accountability and the maintenance in order to kind of keep their new habits in place, or to shift them a little bit according to how life changes for them. That is a much smaller cost for them, but it's also less time for me. So they're paying that small monthly price, but we might not meet for an hour every single month, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to be more of like, just touch and go as they need it. So that to me is something that is super important, because I understand those stages of change and how relapse can happen so easily when we're in that maintenance phase if we don't have that support and accountability. So I think those are the only two changes or two differences that I heard between what you do and what I typically do.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because I do something similar too. I don't call it maintenance, although I do like that name. I may change it. I call it something. So like you said, if we're just meeting like once a month for maintenance, maybe it's a whole hour, maybe it's half an hour, maybe it's 20 minutes, whatever it might be. But the whole purpose is just to stay accountable, to stay consistent, and, address anything that might come up in life, kind of thing. The way that I structure those is, I also do a lower rate for those people. And sometimes we meet monthly, sometimes it's every other month, sometimes it's once a quarter. It just depends on what they think is best. But I typically do what I call an alumni rate, which is like, hey, like you went through that initial 6 months, or, you went through 9 months if that's what the person needed. And now they're at a point to where they need just something to keep the gears moving. But they don't, it doesn't make sense for them to do the full amount. I would give them some sort of like incentive, and, cut back a little bit on the expense, and that would be the alumni rate. So I do something very similar as well.
Yeah, cool. And do you do that month to month typically, or do you have them sign up for a certain number of months also?
I just do that month to month.
Or do you do it per session? I guess that was the other option that was in there.
I guess you could say per session.
You do it per session, okay.
Like I mentioned, some people it's month to month, some it's every other month, some it's quarterly. So, but it's not like a formal agreement kind of thing. Like, hey, we went through that formal agreement period. Now we're here, and again, we'll just keep doing this as long as you get help and value. Yeah.
So I agree with that. And in order to serve them and make sure that they're getting value, and in order to make sure that the income is a little bit predictable, I have a low enough rate where it is month to month. So there's not a specific contract in place, but they do pay it every month, whether or not we meet. And that makes it very easy for me not to have to go and chase them every time they're ready to meet. And it makes it very easy to keep bookkeeping because they just pay that amount every single month, and then they call and or we connect when it's necessary. So the potential downside to that is if you as a coach don't have good boundaries, and this person is paying this small monthly fee month to month, and then they're contacting you 5-6 times a month, that could cost you a lot of money to do that. But if you have those good boundaries, and if you don't, come talk to Cody or I. We'll help coach you through those boundaries. But if you have those good boundaries, then typically they don't usually need me every single month. If they're truly in that maintenance phase, they're kind of doing things along the way. And I might check in with them if I haven't heard from them in 2 or 3 months, because sometimes that means they did something that they were, for lack of a better word, embarrassed to talk about. And they're like, oh, I don't know if I really want to go tell her about that. And so, and just knowing that that's how that works, I want to make sure that we're helping bring them back onto the track that they laid for themselves. But it just makes bookkeeping easy too. And it becomes more of a predictable income. So if you've got, XYZ who are paying this amount every month, then you don't have to wonder, do I have that income coming in? So that's just something that, like I said, I bring it down significantly because I know that Typically, they don't need me every single month. Sometimes it's every other month. And so I kind of factor that into the alumni price, if you will. But that, I think that would be the only difference between what you and I do. And there's no right or wrong. I just wanted to make sure people who are listening know that there are these different options that you can choose from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, I do know that both of us offer different options as far as payment goes. Mm-hmm. So we do like a monthly payment for some people, and we also do an in full payment for a certain amount of time as well. So how would you approach a situation to where, let's say it's a 6-month program and they pay in full, and we get to the end of the 6 months, how would you approach potentially either re-upping for another 6 months or going to a monthly, strategy or whatever it might be, rather than just saying, hey, we reached our 6 months, good luck, you know?
That's a really, really good question. I'm really glad you brought it up, because about 10 minutes ago, I mentioned setting expectations for clients and then said we'd get to it. And I probably would have forgotten to get back to it. So this is bringing me right back there. And I'm so glad that you asked. The way that you handle this situation, Cody, will be very much dependent upon how you set that expectation in the beginning. And if you didn't set the expectation in the beginning, this is going to be a very awkward moment. So if you're listening today, listen to how you set it up so that you don't have to be so awkward when you hit the end of that 6 months in this example. What I mean by that, Cody, is if you tell somebody it's a minimum of 6 months and then we don't know what's happening after that, that still, yeah, you're good for the 6 months, but then it's like, well, now we have to re-up, we have to resell, we have to do that again. Whereas if you kind of explain in the beginning, here is how human behavior works. Here are some of the expectations as you go through this change process. You know, we've talked on this show before about like the U curve when we're talking about making changes in our lives, right? I think when we talked about it, it was kind of along the lines of how, when you create a business, what does that look like? What are the emotions that you experience? Well, our clients are experiencing very similar emotions and experiences when they are making a change in their life. There's going to be something where they're like, yes, I'm super excited to do this. And then a little bit of reality hits and they come down a little bit, and then they're in the pits because everything bombards them. And they're like, I don't know how to get out of this. And we talked about it in terms of what their why was and how that really, really strong why will help them get out of that pit and bring them back up to the top of the U. If you can describe behavior change in a very similar way, like here are some of the things that are going to happen when you make a change in your life, and I want to be there along those lines for you the entire way. Like I want to get you out to maintenance and then beyond, right? You're using that language for them so that when you get to the end of that 6 month, if that's what you've set up with them is a 6-month package, you get there and say, hey, remember when we talked about X, Y, and Z? And if you are really good, you're actually kind of bringing that up along the way. You're letting them know, hey, I'm seeing some hints of, preparation in here. Like what? And you're, now you're really in action. This is fantastic. You know what's next after this whole action? We're going to be in action for a long time because it takes a long time to create new habits, and you start using that language. So if you get, let's say that they're in action and you're in month 5 and you get to the end of month 6, if you were in month 5, you say, we're going to be in action for a while. It could be 2, 6, 8 months. Now, when you get to the end of that 6-month period, hey, I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to do this. How are you feeling right now? What stage do you believe you're in? I'm in action, man. I'm doing this. Or they might say, I'm in maintenance. They might say, because, that's great. How long have you been sustaining these new habits of yours? These new behaviors? Well, at least 3 weeks.
Right.
Okay. So you're able to then help them see, well, we know science has shown that it takes X, Y amount of time in order for habits to really start to change and blah, blah, blah. And how would you like some help getting through that?
Mm-hmm.
Then they can decide whether they want to, quote, rehire you, re-up their stuff or not. And if you and they determine together that they truly are in maintenance, that's when you would decide, you know what? I agree. I think that you've really maintained this behavior. You're in a really great spot. I also know how likely relapse is for most people at this stage. I would really like to have the opportunity to help you avoid that if possible. I have this really great alumni rate or maintenance rate, however it is that you call it. I wanted to share that with you and see if that's something that you think would help you to maintain your new behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And that way it's all about them. It's not about your income. It's not about, it's not even about a different package or anything like that. It's really just truly meeting them where they are and listening to them and reflecting back to them and seeing what you can do in order to help them move forward.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that you said that's important is that it's about them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
If you're able to see how they're feeling and also, inform them of like, hey, like there is a potential that you could relapse here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just me saying that just for the sake of keeping you as a client. That's me saying that because I care about you. I've seen it happen before. There's studies on it happening. So, it could be beneficial for us to continue in some way. And here are some options. If you're able to do that, then, it becomes, you're coming from a place of actual, like, genuinely caring about them versus you just trying to hold on to them. Yeah. And the client, especially if you've been working together for X amount of time, 6 months, something like that, they're going to learn you just as you have learned them. And they're going to pick up on that. Mm-hmm. They're going to see what your intentions are versus, when you're trying to move forward. Mm-hmm. So if you're able to put the focus on them, put your intention on them, then it's going to work out for you in the end better than not. And you won't always get those people who say, yes, let's move forward. You'll have some people who will say, no, I think, I appreciate what you're saying, but I really do feel confident because of what we've done here. And I really appreciate that. Mm-hmm. And at that point, like, you just have to let them go, and that's okay. But you will see more and more people start to continue to work with you if you were to approach it with that sort of approach.
2 add-ons to that. One, when they say, no, I appreciate what you're saying, but I don't think I need that. I'm okay. I'm good. Make sure that you don't, A, take that personally, because it's not about you, right? It's about them. And B, remind them that if and when something happens and they need you, you are still there for them. Yes. That they can rejoin later on, that this is not like one deciding factor and then that's it, right?
Yes,
so that's one thing. The second add-on is just to reiterate that if you are using language throughout your coaching session, then it won't feel like you are trying to sell them anything. It will just feel natural. The language that you've used throughout the last 6 months, when you start to talk about some of these things, whether it's the way they feel, like what stage they might be in, etc., it's almost going to be expected. Like they're going to be like, well, yeah, of course he's going to talk about this. And it won't feel like you sold him at 6 months, 6 months ago, and now we're revisiting this again. So be very intentional with the way that you speak to them, with the words that you use when you are in those sessions, because it will absolutely make that 6 month period or the re-up time just feel very natural for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that you mentioned that I want to touch on is you said, hey, just so you know, I'm still here for you if and when you're ready, or if and when you need to reach back out. That exact thing happened to me this past week. I stopped working with someone back in, I think it was April. And when we stopped, she paid in full for 6 months, got to the end. She decided that she wanted to do things on her own. I supported her with it, but told her that exactly. I said, hey, if and when you ever need, just know I'm here for you. Mm-hmm. And fast forward, April? So like 5 months. Mm-hmm. Fast forward 5 months, I get a text message from her. And she said, hey, I have been really struggling with a lot of mental health issues. And because of that, it has affected my spending habits. It's affected my savings. And I feel like I'm just going backwards, and I don't want to go back to where I was when we first met. Mm-hmm. So I'd really love to set up a call and talk about how we can get back on track here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a perfect example,
mm-hmm.
you know?
Yep.
So,
yep. And if I may, I'm just going to, and I'm just going to, just for fun, because, I love those stages. I'm going to say that she's not even necessarily going backwards. She's actually just recycling through those stages.
Yeah.
So she's not moving, literally backwards. She's going through those stages again. And if you can picture that circle where you're in maintenance and then you go to relapse, that's what she feels like it's backwards, right? But it's actually forwards in relapse. And then the next thing is pre-contemplation again. And she was probably stuck there within the last couple months. And now she's back to contemplative, where she is at thinking like, I wonder if Cody could help me right now. Like, I wonder if I could get back on track. That's that contemplation thing happening. And if she rehires you, it sounds like she may have already done that. But your job now is not just to get her, quote, back on track, but to help her cycle through those again, but faster. Mm-hmm. Because she doesn't have to stay in contemplation. She doesn't have to do as much preparation. She just needs to reestablish the foundation that she made with you before, and then fill in some of the holes that maybe weren't filled in before because you didn't know about them, she didn't know about them, life hadn't presented them, and just fill those in and then quickly move back to preparation/action. So your job at that point, Cody, just to reiterate, is to help move those through those stages again, but in a little bit faster manner than she would definitely be able to do it by herself.
Yeah, because a lot of that groundwork has already been done.
Yes.
So yeah, it would be quicker, which is obviously helpful to her as well. Mm-hmm. So, and just for context, I have not brought her back on yet. We're meeting next week to have a phone call. Okay. But I have a good feeling about it. Like, it sounds like she is definitely in that contemplative place, because she has probably been in the pre-contemplative place for a little bit of time. Mm-hmm. So I think that she's about to move forward here. So. Cool.
Well, if you need any help, you personally need any help figuring out what are some of the things you could do, knowing where she is, to help move her forward through those, hit me up. We'll have a quick session on that. Mm-hmm. So anyway.
Good to know.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we are here for. So this really was a fantastic discussion about how long do we have clients? I hope that you as our listeners got some ideas on how to determine that for yourself. It really is not, it's not in your client's best interest to just listen to us and go, well, they do a 6-month package. Maybe I'll just do a 6-month package. Have an idea of, again, what is it you're trying to accomplish? And all the things. Brainstorm it, put it all down. And I know some of the primary things that you're wanting to accomplish for yourself is going to be a steady income. That's going to be something that's predictable. You're going to want that as well. And something that is manageable. So you don't want to bring clients on for a certain amount of money that you're meeting with them, every single day for the first 30 days. Just kind of keep some of that stuff in mind. And then what is the ultimate plan and goal for them? What do you want for them? And consider that when you're trying to figure out what kinds of packages and stuff you're going to create. So everyone who's listening today may have a very unique as a fingerprint type of package. That's super important to know that that's okay. What we gave you today is really just a framework, just a springboard from which to start thinking about how is it that you're going to set up your structure for the clients and how long you meet with them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Good stuff today.
Yeah, very, very good.
Like I said, this stemmed from the meetup, and that was a really good meetup as well. So yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation because it's something that I think a lot of people wonder about, whether they're new coaches or they've been coaching for a little bit and they're trying to just, figure out, hey, am I doing this as best as I can? This is something that I think is pretty valuable. So, run with it, do what works best for you, and just trust your gut. A lot of this has to do with trusting your gut. And oftentimes your gut is right. So,
and be willing to tweak along the way.
Yep.
Because you're not going to get it right every time for every client, and that's okay.
That's right. So.
All right. Thank you so much for bringing this up, Cody. I really appreciate it. I too enjoyed this conversation, and I look forward to whatever it is that we talk about next week. You guys, thanks so much for tuning in today. We really appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing you next week as well. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Coaches Podcast. Brought to you by New Money Habits and Sizemore Financial Coaching. Submit your questions to our hosts by emailing podcast@newmoneyhabits.com. Be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and join our growing group of like-minded coaches on Facebook. And until next time, happy coaching. Music provided by Summer School.